Welcome to Artistic Adventures. Today's adventure, we continue with the steampunk series and we're going to make some steampunk boots for our doll. Let's get started. The first step is to make outer soles, and I'm using these silicone molds that I made in the first shoemaking video that I made, and I'll put a link to that below. These are made out of polymer clay, and then the outer sole is cardboard covered with some raw silk that I did off camera. There's more detail on that on my shoemaking videos. Now, to make the pattern for the boot, I used a paper towel and sort of draped it around this leg that I pulled off of one of my dolls. And I just cut it out so that the pattern reaches just to where the sole of the shoe will be. And then it will curve around on one side and attach, so that side will be longer than the other side. So that's the body of the boot. Then for the vamp, I also used a paper towel and measured this so that you'd have enough to bend under, because this part of the boot will be between the inner and outer soles. So it has to bend under. I then made a more permanent pattern out of some cardstock. It'll be a little bit easier to use when I'm cutting it out. The fabric I'm using is fake leather, and when you cut this out, you're going to flip that over so that your pattern will work for the right and left side, and have the flap that comes over be on the outer part of the leg. And then we're just going to cut those out and going to start assembling the shoe. We're going to take the inner sole, and as we start putting the vamp on, the easiest way to do this is just to put the sides on first, because curving the toe part around and folding it under is the hardest part. So anyway, start out by just doing the outer sides underneath, and you see you've got your opening there for the toe to go in. And we're going to let that dry completely. And then I'm going to cut some V's across the top of that so that it'll be easier to tuck that under. You can see the little V sticking up there. It looks like Bart Simpson's hair. All right, then just glue that final part down. And you want to look at it from the top part too to see if there's any protrusions. I want it to look very rounded. Okay, now I've got both of the inner soles with the vamp glued on. Now we're going to glue the outer sole to the inner sole just at the toe. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to clamp it down to make sure I get a really tight glue job on these. We'll glue the back part later. So I put some aluminum foil around those so the glue wouldn't stick to the clamp. All right, so that's how they look when they're glued down. They actually look like a little cute pair of mules, which is a way to make another pair of shoes if you wanted to, but we're going to continue and make these into boots. So we're going to glue down the back part of the upper sole to the outer sole, and I'm just going to hold these off camera for a while to make sure they're glued. Now to put the upper part of the boot on, I'm lining up this curved part to make sure it's symmetrical, and then I'm just going to put a little dab of glue right on the back of the heel, and then take the center of this curved part and glue it right to the back of the heel and let that dry completely. It's going to make fitting the rest of that upper sole down really a whole lot easier. Okay, so do both shoes like that and just glue that right to the back there. And then we're going to let those dry completely. All right, and now we can start gluing around the side of that sole to the upper part of the boot. And I'm just putting some glue around right at the edge. And I can use a sharp tool to kind of press it down in between the inner and outer sole there at the toe. It makes it look like a lot better fit. Okay. And we're going to let that side dry and do the other shoe. Doing one side at a time, it really makes it a whole lot easier to fit it. If you try to do the other side, the other side will slip off. And I realized after I did that side that I actually meant to hem this top part down before I had glued it to, but we'll go ahead and do it now. And I'm using just the tiniest stitch there to pick up a section of that fleece backing so that it doesn't go through to the outside of the leather look. That way it'll just look like it's folded down. If I was doing this with real leather, I wouldn't be able to sew it probably. It just would be too thick. And you might be able to glue it though if you use some like kid leather. All right, so when you finish that, then we can go ahead and glue down the other side. I'm just trimming off a little bit there that didn't fit properly. And once again, just putting some glue around the outer sole, using my little tool to make sure that it's right at the edge and poking down in at the toe part. And now I've glued just one side of the shoe down, the part that will be underneath, and I'm going to start putting some trim on the boot right across where that part folded over. So I'm putting a little thin strand of glue on there and then putting some of this leather string on that and holding it until it dries, and then I can trim off that small piece. Using it long like that helps you hold it down to glue it. Okay. All right, now that part is dry, I'm going to fold the flap over and glue that, and then I'll be able to put some trim around on that part as well. So I'm just going to do the part that folds over the toe. You have to do this a little bit at a time. I am going to fit the boot on the doll before I glue the rest of it, because these boots are not going to come off. They're not meant for that. It's going to be part of the outfit for my steampunk doll that I'll end up selling on Etsy. So I got that side folded over and then glued the piece of the leather string on it. And I went ahead and fitted it on the doll and glued the rest of the side up. And then I'm going to go ahead a section at a time and glue that leather string along the seam as trim. Do that a section at a time. It's just easier to let it dry as you're doing, especially as you're working around curves. When you get to that straight part, I could pretty much film the rest of it. Now you'll notice I did some buckles there off screen. I used a thin strip of that fake leather material and used some of those buckles we made in the previous buckle making video. And I'm putting a little piece of chain around there just for decoration. And that's how the finished boot looks. I'm going to finish the other boot off camera to save time. And that's how our finished product looks. Hope you enjoyed this video. It was kind of, it's a difficult project, so don't be frustrated if you don't get it right away. But stay tuned, we've got more steampunk. I've got to finish this doll's face and hair and a few finishing touches. And you don't want to miss anything, so please subscribe. Thanks, and bye.